Okay, second half of chapter 1 then. So about halfway down page 7 we get the idea that Bryony enjoys novels because they give you the pleasures, it calls it, of miniaturisation. A world could be made in 5 pages and one that was more pleasing than a model farm. So again, McEwan's emphasising Bryony's focus on neatness, on order, as being what makes a good story. Okay, and the idea that actually that's what we get in Arabella, that's what Bryony gives us at the end of Atonement, but by returning to her childhood and by returning to what should have happened rather than what actually did happen. Okay, McEwan's showing that these mistakes go on and we can only rectify them through imposing a very false order. She goes on to say a couple of lines after that, falling in love could be achieved in a single word, a glance. McEwan's emphasising Bryony's youth at this point. Okay, she thinks she understands love, she thinks she understands these sorts of things. But then when we think about it, the word that probably sets up the love between Robbie and Cecilia is when Robbie writes a letter and drops the C-bomb. That's the word that Cecilia sees and really, you know, shows the weight of his feeling. And Bryony completely misunderstands that and sees him as a maniac. Okay, so again, the language is emphasising Bryony's youth and Bryony's lack of control, really. We get the language to describe Lola and Jackson Pirro about halfway down page 8 after the break. It describes them as refugees from a bitter domestic civil war. McEwan's deliberately using war language, okay, refugees, civil war, deliberately using those sorts of phrases, those sorts of expressions to link to those characters. Okay, the war's colouring this little bit of the novel. Okay, we've got this heat wave, but it's the calm before the storm. Contextually, the world's about to change. And for Bryony as a child, the world's about to change. Why? Because Lola is bringing this slightly more adult world, this slightly darker world in. Just flicking over to the very, very top of page 10, a nice little link we can have here. The very top line, what children mostly wanted was to be left alone. Lovely little link there. We could talk about how Emily keeps Bryony young because she wants to keep her as this imaginative little girl for her own sake, just like Gradgrind wants to keep his children as utilitarian models. They're not being left alone in both novels. A big part of childhood is adults getting involved, not leaving the kids alone. This is carried on about 7 or 8 lines down on chapter 12. Mrs. Tallis never had anything to impart that needed saying simultaneously to both daughters, emphasising Emily's lack of control, lack of power, just like Mrs. Gradgrind. In both cases, a weak mother figure during childhood is setting up all these kinds of problems. Lovely little link you can make there. Towards the bottom of page 12, we get the mention of the parents, whatever institutionalised strength was locked in this plural, was about to fly apart or had already done so. The idea of the breakup of the nuclear family, things are breaking up, this tempest is coming. Contextually, the world is changing. It's not this innocent bubble that Bryony has built up. Lola's described just over halfway down page 13. Lola uncrossed her legs. One of the very first things she does is a slightly sexualised image. Okay, McEwan is stressing this idea of Lola as, on the one hand, being an innocent girl and a victim, on the other hand, being this symbol of real sexuality. A much more overtly sexual figure than Robbie. Okay, as readers, we're noticing this. McEwan showing Bryony's lack of understanding and her ignorance, maybe at not noticing these sorts of things. We get Lola basically convincing, over the course of page 13 and 14, convincing Bryony that she should play Arabella, even though it's Bryony's play. Okay, 3rd line down, she says, I had a long illness last year, so I could do that part of it well too. Lola basically has got control over language. She gets this advantage, she gets what she wants because she controls language. She reads the trials of Arabella in a slightly sarcastic way, she dominates language. McEwan foreshadows right to the end where Bryony's written this novel that tells the truth, but she can't publish it because Lola's still got control. Lola would still sue her, she still can't do it. Okay, so Bryony's sort of childhood lack of period as the younger child is echoed in her adulthood. It's set up, all these things are set in motion right at the start. We're told about 2/3 of the way down page 15, Bryony had never really confronted anyone before because her life was generally pleasant and well protected. Okay, McEwan's setting up, isn't he, with this heat wave, with this way of life. It's a way of life that's about to die out. Okay, it's deliberately old-fashioned. It's linked to Bryony's childhood because this is a slightly nostalgic view of the way things were. But it's not entirely accurate, it's about to change. We get a few bits, a few extracts of the trials of Arabella, which we get again right at the end. Okay, there's a little bit of humour there. The first 2 lines. This is a tale of spontaneous Arabella who ran off with an extrinsic fella. It only works if you mispronounce it. It's a deliberately childish rhyme. It doesn't quite work. Okay, McEwan's emphasising Bryony's sort of childish tone. And actually, ironically, that's what she goes back to at the end. She goes to the happy ending because really, that's what we really want. And then right towards the end of this, it talks about Bryony understanding the chasm that lay between an idea and its execution. Okay, setting up this idea that Bryony doesn't always, allow these things to happen in the way that she wants to. Her language in the book and her writing is the way that she achieves that result, but it goes wrong for her. Talks about Jackson reading the names as though they were names on a list of dead people. Okay, it foreshadows the war and the death and destruction that's to come. The way that Bryony, due to the war and due to a lack of understanding, is actually losing this ordered control that she wants. And even when she does impose that, she then takes it apart at the end to tell us, actually, that's not the reality, that's not what's going on. Okay, and then right at the end we talk about Lola again having control of language. She spoke her lines correctly but casually, sometimes smiled inappropriately. She's that little bit older, she's that little bit more sexually aware. Okay, and it's stressing that idea that Bryony's language is altering and carry well into it. So make sure you've got those notes, make sure you use a pencil, then rub it before the exam, and hopefully that will help you through chapter 1 of Atonement.